Hello, my name is Chris Blask. Welcome to Cybeats Powerhouse Perspectives. I'm VP of Strategy with Cybeats. With me today is Ken Hoyme, who's been with Boston Scientific and Honeywell for many years. And today is, in fact, your last day. Today you are retiring.
Yep. Yes, it is. At least for the
Thanks
first
for,
time.
at least for the first time. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there is a boomerang effect. I'll warn you about that. Um, so as we're discussing in the before the show, right? This conversation tends to be about for each of us where we've been, where are we at right now, and where are we going. And given your background, if I understand correctly, you started your career at Honeywell in 1983 doing research. You
Yep.
spent an enormous amount of time on medical devices, avionics as well.
Yes, my
And
first 18 years was pretty much in commercial aviation, and then the last 20 has been in medical devices.
you can imagine if you reverse those two, the differences in avionics in the last 20 and the and medical devices in the first 18. It's so since we tend to be talking about supply chain stuff, and the medical space is enormous in this space. The software bill of material proof of concept in the medical sector was the first thing cranked through when the Department of Commerce was leading all this over the last couple of years. And so looking back, the first question, uh, the when you look at the importance of metrics and transparency have evolved during your career, right? So we look at it at this span of time. As I see this, maybe I'm just biased. You've been working on these issues on transparency and so forth forever. In early, as you say, early in your career, avionics was a space where the airframe builders and pilots and operators are trying to get more and more clarity about the moment by moment state and handling of aircrafts. At the end of your career, medical devices. More and more of us are getting those things implanted in us, and we want to know exactly what's going on with them. So, what are your thoughts? How has visibility, transparency, clarity, metrics driven
Sure.
overall?
I mean, it was interesting in one of the contrasts that I've seen in the medical device world versus the avionics world is the presence of a very sophisticated integrator. When I worked on Boeing aircraft, Boeing understood every piece of that aircraft and made sure things were tested and brought together and issues driven, and corrected. A lot of flight testing that before any passengers got on board. Um, in today's world, the hospitals are kind of their own integrators. They are buying products from different companies. They make their own choices and they integrate it together in their hospitals. And as the interconnectedness of these devices has increased, the need for information about them so that they can be managed safely and effectively in the hospital context has changed because and the challenges I think that we still have as an industry is it's a n squared problem. We have several thousand manufacturers and thousands of hospitals, and how you communicate information, how things like the software bill of materials. I think we still have a yet to be cleanly solved method of how do we distribute that information so the people who need it have correct and accurate information and can act on it. It's I mean, even within the software bill of materials, um, configuration matters. It's you may have when we had WannaCry happen a few years ago, it was a SMB version 1 issue, and well, if you had a Windows-based device and you had that service shut off because you weren't using it, you weren't going to be vulnerable to that particular exploits. But how do you communicate the information necessary to not only say, here's the version of the software I have in it, but how can you effectively communicate configuration information? I think that's still a area to be worked. I think the software bill of materials people have talked about this vulnerability exchange VEX format as a way of trying to be able to communicate whether a particular vulnerability is exploitable in a particular platform. But I think we've made a lot of progress in terms of the importance of that information. But I think we still have a lot of work remaining in terms of how it's tooled, how that information is effectively distributed.
Well, and playing off your experience, as you say, in the avionics space in that era, it was all about, rigor to the nth degree. And in my early career, early 90s, in my early career in security, running into hospitals, I'll remember the first time I had to stop and think about this is like, oh, wait, that's right. That's the worst possible scenario. You have, universities that are also hospitals doing research worth a lot of money and human beings plugged into the network. And it's all, live in real time. You couldn't get further from something as contained and controlled as avionics. And it's actually in your idle retirement, the National Manufacturing Institute of Scotland, you might be interested in. Is an interesting combination of these things, working with Rolls Royce and Boeing to model out how we do clarity in supply chain down to the point of saying, if a blade breaks in a turbine, can you tell me what software was running on the contractor's smart plasma form at the time it made that individual blade? And I think those sorts of issues and trying to get the control we have in avionics in medical space, which we have to, uh, forces assumptions, that, in that example, if the Boeing customer is a national air force, we wouldn't even be able to send them every single S-bomb for every single machine tool that made every single part and every single rivet. There's too much information.
Yeah.
So it has to get to the kind of maturity that, maybe I'm stretching the analogy, but avionics is still, well developed and was early. Maybe the rest of us need to catch up and understand that it's not a one to many or one to one. It's many to many. And
Yep.
it ramifies, and each point, has that clarity.
So as just a total aside, I spent 3.5 years at Adventium Labs doing medical device research, and I had a Department of Homeland Security contract for developing a medical device architecture. It was one of 10 contracts that were let around the idea of security of cyber physical systems. And at one of the program reviews, one of the other research groups was working on, if you are doing 3D manufacturing and you tamper with the manufacturing file, you can introduce failures into parts that are invisible from the outside. And they were looking at researching ways, and they were looking at acoustic signatures and things of that nature of how do you determine whether a part has been tampered with. And if you start thinking about all the ways you could introduce vulnerabilities, in this case, it's a physical vulnerability, but driven by a software supply chain related to its manufacturing. So there is no ends of problems still to be solved and thought through in this space.
Well, and that sort of leads into the second question. Early in my career, in the by the mid '90s, I figured, oh my god, all the excitement's over. Everybody knows about firewalls, and found out that no one had ever said the word out loud ever, and it was just a couple hundred people, and it just takes years and years and years, decades, for that to roll out into a global environment. And in your idle retirement, as well, the digital bill of materials, and NMIS I mentioned earlier is involved in this. The DBOM is an attestation infrastructure that Mehdi Antazari and I came up with when we were at Unisys about 3 years ago. It's open sourced, and in the supply chain space, there's not a lot of people who can really have the conversation yet. I would count them in dozens globally. As we're all focused on how I get this one artifact, an S-bomb, from place A to place B, but how do I get the entire world? How do I put everybody on the internet, basically, attestations going everywhere? It seems to me it's one of these long-term paths. It'll take 10 or 20 years more.
And
So,
I think an irony that we've been wrestling with in the connectivity world is, in order to patch vulnerabilities quickly, you need connectedness so that you can get the patches out there. But if you then have that connectedness, you now have a greater threat surface. That means you have to update it more frequently and get it done. So it's either a disconnected world or it's a fully connected world where we are securely distributing the updates. We're right now living in that in between world in the transition, and we still have much risk present because of it.
and that might be you're right. So I spent a lot of time in the industrial control system space, right? Where medical is this odd duck, it's also cyber physical, but, and the air gap, the last decade, 10 years ago, you have way more people still saying, no, 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 this isn't connected, and Triton and everything else. No, but the safety systems aren't connected. No, no, no.
Yeah.
Um, and I think you just can't get there from here. I think, looking at that is second question. If I was talking to young folks right now, coming out of college, looking into it and so forth, I think focusing on the meshiness, everything's connected to everything else. It is, start with that and work forward. Either we can control things like security and information and things moving around, or we can't have nice things. And I'm pretty sure we're going to work it out. And it feels to me like that's an area where there's going to be a lot of jobs
Oh yeah.
for a long time.
And I think that's an interesting. We've kind of gone through an era where people came out of college and were looking. Can I go work for a game manufacturer or or Google or something of that nature? I personally have always found fascination working on hard problems, and I think the control and interacting with the physical world, things where safety is involved, is always been kind of the direction that I've been drawn. I think there's still a lot of interesting hard problems. If I was coming out of school right now, going into something that was hard and had safety properties, to me, I think the whole world of self-driving cars and those type of stuff has some really frightening hard problems that are still, I think, need to be worked out.
Well, exactly. And I think, Anthony, you put up that last question. So where is the most productive path going forward? We talked about this beforehand, and you can see hopefully where I'm going with this, right? So I'm literally on a boat. I've started an electric boat company that is going to autonomously take people around the water and do things. And I think, putting this in context of your space, avionics and medical devices, avionics kind of control. The nice thing about the automated boats that I'm involved with is they're slow. And they work in shallow waters. And, from a safety perspective, we're at the point right now where I can sign off on, being an executive and legal liability, responsibility, and so on and so forth for people on this sort of infrastructure now. But I wouldn't want to be Elon Musk, right? 70 miles an hour on, 3 feet away on pavement is a whole different world. Or Maersk, how do I get a huge ship across a storm-tossed ocean?
Yeah, to me, I think one of the things that I learned early in working in avionics was understanding, separate from the cybersecurity attacker, what a bitch Murphy is. There's just so many ways that things can fail, and in trying to anticipate them requires levels of redundancy that are on aircraft that I just don't know whether or not the car world is wrestling with. How do you deal with the effects of single event upsets and things that are just the natural phenomenon that happen there, much less you start becoming a target of hackers that could find interesting behavior. I always feel like one of the reasons why I don't know that medical devices have necessarily been a focus of attackers is, and this is somewhat of a sad statistic, but if you look at, there's been a couple of research studies that talk about the number of people that die in hospitals from accidental causes, infections, things of that nature that are part of that. It's equivalent of about a 747 crash every day. And in that background, if somebody attacked a medical device, they may not be able to figure out that it happened that way, and they're not going to get necessarily the big press. If they hack a car and they cause a crash on some freeway and it's going to get pressed, there's a certain positive feedback that, see what I did. And so it'll be interesting to see how that area evolves in a secure way, because it's going to require communication between vehicles as well at some point in terms of doing that, and those links could be a productive target for attackers.
Right. You said a couple of things that are important, So on the water, the thing to keep in mind is the third thing kills you, right? Because Murphy is a bitch. Things happen all the time, and that's I could have sworn I put that cleat on properly, but it came off, or the anchor's not. So you have another one, and Murphy is redundant as well. So two things can happen at the same time. Nothing you can do to stop that. You just can't have three. You run out of hands, right?
Yeah.
I think that's, both from the security perspective and supply chain and automated vehicles, right? I think even in avionics, look at the modern jets, the F-22 and F-35 and these sort of things. I think we have the opportunity now to not just make really good titanium fins, but have vehicles that are internally redundant enough, because you may not be able to ever find, with the level of complexity we're putting into everything. You can't have the perfect car, you can't have the perfect software. God bless the SR-71, but we can't ever build another one of those, by hand.
By slide rule.
by slide rule. Oh my God. Yeah. It's not like walking in the feet of footsteps of giants is like being a little kid holding Andre the Giant's hand. Like, really? But I think that's the productive path going forward is I think learning the lessons from the past, maybe, and realizing that we're going through eras.
Yeah, and I think the sense that cybersecurity is an add-on or a thing a couple of people do over in the corner has to fundamentally change, and has to be recognized that just like many of the other abilities, usability and reliability and all those type of things, it really has to be started from the initial concept. People need to understand what underlying architectures do to make or break whether security is going to be a well structured in a particular product, or whether it's going to be a constant source of pain. So I don't know whether enough kids coming out of school have been steeped well in cybersecurity issues to be there's going to have to be a lot of ongoing training.
Right. And connectivity as well. I think I've always seen, as someone who cares about security, what I found is that when there's an economic advantage, people adopt a lot of it. And I'm hoping that part of what we're going through now with this supply chain era, and we're a couple of decades into cybersecurity, we're getting a little better at this. Is recognizing that good security saves money, and if you don't adopt it, your competitors do, then your costs are higher. And now it's not about security; it's about can you effectively stay in business?
Yep. Yeah, and I think the FDA just published a couple of weeks ago their latest updated draft for pre-market guidance on cybersecurity, and they're more and more specifying things that are going to take work, and they're all necessary, but it's they're trying to use the controls they have in terms of regulating and approving devices as a means to get manufacturers to put SBOMs in place, to make sure they have the means to patch their devices and a plan for how they do it. One of my soapboxes has been that manufacturers have to think about particularly updating supply chain issues. So updating operating systems. The vast majority of vulnerabilities that will be in your device when you ship it come from those third-party components. Certainly, if you don't code things well yourself, you can have vulnerabilities in your native code for what you're doing as a function. But to discover those, somebody has to focus specifically on your device to find them. So they will happen, but that, as opposed to if you've chosen to use a Microsoft or other one, you just know that they're going to be continually patching and updating. So understanding within the corporate organization, one of the challenges in the medical device world, I don't think this is separate from where we were in aviation. The team that knows how to do the software is usually your R&D team. And once this current one is shipped, they're working on the next thing. And so if you're coming in and saying, I need to update the operating system, I need to distribute patches, and you're taking the time off the R&D team to do that, they miss schedules on their promises for the next deliverable, and the executives are rewarded on meeting schedules for the next deliverable. So you have to think about perhaps splitting off a team that's specifically skilled and getting patches applied, re-verifying that things are working well, and getting them out distributed quickly. And so that's kind of a built-in cost that's there, and not uh, putting your next deliverables at risk. You know that you're going to need it, so you just need to put that in place.
Yep. Well, and fortunately, I see a competitive advantage in that, because if you've thought through, the motivations of the executives that are, approving the budgets, then you have the right structures in place, so you're not getting stuck in the same problems that
Right.
you and I have spent our entire careers in. But,
Well, and when you talk about transparency earlier, um, another area that I've seen significant change in transparency is just the idea that you're doing coordinated vulnerability disclosure. And one of the things that I established when I came back to Boston Scientific in 2016 was our coordinated disclosure program, and the posting of bulletins on vulnerabilities and issues that are, 10 years, 20 years ago, nobody would have considered that we would admit there's a problem to something and put it on our webpage for everyone to read. It's like, you're going to do what? I mean, where I started my career transition into understanding cybersecurity, from coming from a background of fault tolerance and safety critical systems, was in the developing of, we did a remote patient management system for implantable defibrillators and pacemakers. And we had a security team, and we were building a defibrillator with a long range radio. Long meaning you can put a bedside monitor and read the device when the patient's sleeping. That bedside monitor, new programmer, and the web system for all of the collecting all the data when the patients are sleeping at night. And we understood the cybersecurity risks that were present, and we built secure protocols that link from the implant to the home monitor. There was a form of authentication, so the device knew when it was talking to a home monitor, and would refuse any programming commands from a home monitor, because you're not supposed to program these things when you're not in a doctor's office. And we put this in place, and when the word started coming out in 2008 about problems hacking defibrillators, I tried to talk to our marketing people, and nobody wanted to communicate that we had done a good job. It was like, because they're afraid, well, that'll make hackers focus on us. So, there was this hesitancy of like, don't say anything that could imply that there's even a problem out there, because they didn't want the shakeup, and that's totally different today.
well, I think, over your career, and mine is just a slightly shorter. We're driving to. I really believe we're driving to a more transparent future. And things are moving fast. There's more information. I've been through exactly those sort of situations. Like, oh well, let's not say. It's like, okay, and from a security perspective, maybe at a point in time that's fine, but that's not a long-term plan.
No.
And we've seen, I know we're sort of over time here, but I'll try. But in the medical space, one of the most fascinating indicators I've seen in all this was in the energy sector SBOM POC, when they had the medical sector people sharing their experience. The vendor involved, the major vendor involved, was running through things, and really just said, just casually, just because it's just true. It's like, what we really found is that we're saving time and we have better customer relations, because people, you already have relations with, they're your customers.
Yep.
You're already telling them things, but it is these human blocks. Do I want to be the person responsible for it? But as we move into more of a, honestly, the economic filtering, security as well, those who survive will be more and more transparent. So maybe we can, maybe if not in our formal working careers, maybe you and I are still young enough to see that really become something in business, which will root out a lot of the structural problems we have.
Well, another thing that I've seen that has transitioned has been a lot more industry collaboration, and we have groups where I know my equivalents in most of the major device manufacturers, because I've met them in industry meetings. I know some of the key players at hospitals that are driving this, so we understand what is the customer really needing in this space, what's their friction points, and it just has been a real collaboration, including the FDA being actively involved in those activities and encouraging them, and really trying to partner rather than club. So it's been gratifying to see.
Yeah, the information, the ISACs. I've been involved with that for a long time. And it's at an interesting stage in itself, but that's the topic for a whole another session. So, Ken, thank you for your time today. Thank you for sharing your last day formally employed with us and everything you've done for the industry.
I appreciate it. I've enjoyed chatting with you, Chris.
Thanks. Bye, folks.